if we just have a look at the key challenges that did come out of the last survey. Sorry. Just quickly, this is the number of people that took part in it, 67 agency heads, and you can see the market sectors that they represented, digital agencies being the largest, and then also the regions that were indeed covered. So we've got a fairly wide spread there, which is good, and I think that gives more rounded figures when we're looking at these. The biggest challenges that we saw, and these remain constant throughout most of the surveys we do, and also over the sort of 10-15 years I've been doing this, but the biggest challenges are over-servicing, increasing the profitability of an agency, and recruiting the talent. Now, I think those three all go hand in hand, and it's solving a key issue, which we'll have a look at in a moment, that I think helps stop the over-servicing and indeed just does look at increasing the profitability. And I think the key thing is really the planning stage of an agency, and this is what I believe lots of agencies don't do accurately enough, and then those three challenges become an issue within the business. So the thing that I feel agencies should be spending more time and being more accurate on is the accurate cost forecast for the year, and also in planning the profit that the agency would like to achieve, and also understanding that the target billable hours. What is the real utilization of an agency? And to get to that figure, you need to really look at the data you may or may not have from management systems you use, be it Excel or other systems, but look at where is the time of people in an agency being spent, and the target billable hours should strip out all the things like over-servicing. If you're planning over-servicing, it should be taken out. So if we look at my example I've got here, and this would be a typical 10-man agency that I might see and work with, and what we've got here is a cost forecast for this business of 720,000 a year, and we'd like to make a 20% profit, so 144,000. So therefore, the income required is 864,000. Now, for the purpose of this, I've stripped out third-party costs. So I'm looking at this as if it was true income. Obviously, if we've got bought-in costs, we'd use a GP calculation. But for the purpose of this, I'm just looking at this as if it was income. So we can see this business has got an income forecast that is required of 864. Now, I've said here that their true utilisation rates are 60%, which means 60% of the hours per week they can charge to a client, which gives me the available hours in the year of 10,125, and I've used an average hourly rate of around £90 per hour. I know that varies from different industries and different regions in the UK, but that's not an unusual rate that I would see. And that would then give me an income capacity of 911 grand. So I could see from that planning that actually we could achieve more than a 20% profit if I managed my cost forecast on a monthly basis, and I didn't go over my cost forecast. I managed my utilisation rates, and more importantly, I managed my hourly rate, and I did actually achieve £90 per hour. So that is a very basic type of forecasting for the business, but lots of agencies I work with don't do that in great depth, and also they're not monitoring it on a monthly basis. Has anybody got any questions around that just at this stage? Okay. The other thing that I would encourage agencies to consider is what the written off income is. So in this example, if we get a 60% utilisation figure, the 40% of time that we're not going to charge would equate to £607,000 in a year. Now, I've based these calculations on a 45-week year to cover for holidays and all of those type of things. But it's interesting that if agencies start considering what the written off income is, when they're looking at then resourcing and looking at needing more people, is there anything they could do to try to increase the utilisation rate and reduce that written off income? Because that way you're not increasing your cost forecast in terms of bringing on new resource. Are there any questions around that sort of planning stage that people don't do, think they should do better? Okay, so I'll move on to the next thing, which was the top 5 new business challenges for agencies. And it was quite interesting that people are trying to grow the business, but 28% don't have the time to do it. And I think that comes into planning that written off time, that 40% in my example of time that you're accepting isn't going to be chargeable to client. That should be planned in the development of new business. There should be a budget each week or each month that people that are appearing that 40% of time are going to spend doing new business. And again, I think that's fairly critical for agencies, that they're planning that out for the year and then they're monitoring to that. Okay, it looks like we've got a question, and it's from Jenna. So we'll just unmute Jenna. Hi Jenny, are you there? Jenna, are you there? Okay, looks like we've got a problem trying to speak to I don't Jenna's question, sorry, do you have any recommended platforms for tracking billable hours? Jenna, there are various systems out there in the marketplace. The system that we use and implement and install in agencies is called Synergist. But there are various ones out there: Synergist, Streamtime, Traffic Live. These are ones that you probably should consider and have a look at. But they're all good systems. Have a look at those, and again, a lot of it is around the planning and making sure that when the data is coming out of this system, it is fitting in with what you've planned for the business. So sorry we couldn't get you on microphone, Jen. I just saw the question coming on a written format. But going back to the new business challenges, yeah, 28% not finding time to do it. Again, I think you should be planning the time you are going to spend in developing that new business, and also planning on where the new business is going to come from. So rather than adopting an approach where you're out there trying to win lots of business and not really having a target of who you're going after, I think spending the time in focusing on organisations that fit the profile of your agency works really well. But again, you need to plan the time in out of that 40% of who's doing it and when is it going to be done. The other thing that was fairly alarming was the 27% not knowing what the budget is, so therefore it makes it hard to cost accurately. I think if that's the case, you have to just look at what the client's brief is and then put a figure in that's realistic in terms of fitting in with how you've planned the agency. Because if you're trying to second guess what the client's budget is, then you will more often than not be starting that project, which you will go straight into overservicing. If the project's really going to take 100 hours and you need to charge the client 10,000, that's what you should be presenting to the client. If the client's got a budget of 5,000, there is no point in saying, well, we can do it in 50 hours if it's really going to take 100, because straight away you're into a over-servicing issue. So again, I think the planning of finding the time and then putting accurate costs in to the client is really critical in stopping the over-servicing taking place at the outset. these were quite interesting stats. I thought that we're seeing agencies reporting a 1 in 3 success rate, which I think in any business, people with a 33% closure rate would say that is very good. And the other good news was the decrease in clients' budget being less of an issue. So it looks like clients out there do seem to have some budget, and they're willing to spend. So that's good news for the industry. But then the alarming fact that came out of this for me was 43% of agencies dropping their rates. Now, if clients have got more budget and we're reporting 33% closure rates, why would we be dropping our rates to win the work? And also, if you're dropping that rate, and in my example of £90 an hour, if you're dropping that rate, then your planned income is going to be out. So I think doing the planning will make you more aware of that situation when you're dropping your rates and question why you are dropping the rates. So I thought those 3 stats were really interesting. That the top 2 are very positive, but the third one is fairly negative of agencies, and 43% of people are dropping rates up to 20%, because that's going to have an impact straight away on the profitability of the business, which is the second biggest challenge agencies are facing at the moment. The new business fixes that we looked at, it is 48% not keeping an eye on the spend. Again, another fairly alarming fact that if you consider you've done your cost forecast, then each month that actual to budgeted cost forecast should be being reported on within the business, because if the cost forecast is increasing, then the profitability of the agency is going to be reduced, and you're not going to achieve that target profit that you set out for the year. Now, interestingly, that we often find people will say to us, we need more people, we need more designers, more web developers, etc. And when you actually do that initial calculation with their current team of how many hours have they got in a year times by the hourly rate, and you look at what the fee income should be, it's often that the agency is not achieving that fee income, but they're saying they're busy and they need more people, which I think is coming back to this 66% of over servicing. And what I believe is happening is agencies are reducing the rates to get the business in, but then they're not monitoring the actual hours to the estimated hours accurately enough. So therefore the jobs start going over budget, and as a result the agency feels busy, and therefore they look to take on more resource to deal with that busy time and that capacity of the business. But then that knocks the cost forecast out, so therefore the profitability is reduced again. So those 3 things we looked at the beginning of over servicing, profitability and recruiting talent. Again, I think the 3 all go hand in hand, and solving the initial plan and forecasting is the key to changing this and really increasing the profitability in your agency. The using a resource management tool is really to ensure that you are selling the correct number of hours per month and per year, because in order to achieve the 60% utilization that you've set as a target, the thing you need to do is make sure you sell that amount of hours. Now, lots of agencies we work with will see them achieving their sales target in terms of the revenue, but if you actually look at how many hours they need to deliver to achieve that, it's often more than they can deliver in that period. So therefore, will they need more resource? Possibly, but then that increases the cost forecast again. Looking at the new business resources, 62% of agencies have got a dedicated business resource, which is fairly high. But then 38% rely on whoever's got the right experience, and 53% saying that they actually don't put funding to new business. So again, I think these things all should be part of that cost forecast. If you're trying to grow your business and you are trying to drive the income up, we need to be planning for the funds for that new business and also attaching a revenue figure to it. So in your cost forecast line, if you've got a section for new business, the person, the associated costs with them, we should be able to monitor that, but then also look at the revenue that's being generated as a result of it. And I think if we're not monitoring that, again, it's adding to these issues of profitability. So that's really a sort of 15-minute overview of the challenges we've seen in this last report, and also they were very similar to the report before, and really just my views on why that's happening from working with many agencies over about a 10 or 15 year period. The things that I've gone through there seem to be, for me anyway, the common issues that surround agencies. And I think if you do accurate forecasting at the start, and then more importantly monitor to that forecast on a monthly basis, I think the agency's profitability can increase steadily over time. At the moment, what I think is happening in most agencies is this vicious circle of they're not getting the true value of their hours per month and per year. They're doing lots of work for clients where they're not charging correctly the client. Therefore, they're feeling busy, and that's leading to we need more resource. So in effect, what's happening, you're taking resource on to deliver work that you're not charging for, and there's your over-servicing, and there's the profitability issue in a business. And I think it's the accurate planning and monitoring of that plan that will solve that problem for most agencies. Does anybody have any questions around what we've gone through? Okay, there's no questions. So what we'll do, we'll put this presentation up on the Agency Food LinkedIn group. It would be great if people have other questions that they'd like to see in the future surveys going out, because we're always looking to find out what people are finding challenging, see if we can solve any of those problems for you guys. And please take part in all the surveys, because the information we get, I think we can all share and try to do things to really drive the creative sector forward in the UK, and really try to get the value that we're worth. Any questions before we go? Okay, looks like we've got a question. We'll try to unmute you. Hi, Nina. Hi, Nina.
Hi. Hello.
Nina, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Hello, Jay. No, thank you very much for today. Not specifically a question as such, but actually just a point that you raised on rates. I'd be really keen just to hear a bit more, perhaps in another session for another day, on what the best ways of setting the right agency rates are. So I know there are different ways.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, there should only be one way, really. And if you go back to that first screen where I did the planning, so if you've done your cost forecast and then you've planned for the profit you wish to make, you've got that required income figure. That's why it's really important to know what's the true utilization, because X divided by Y, so the income you require divided by the number of hours, will give you that rate you need to achieve. What you then have to do is look at that in relation to, is that a realistic rate you can be achieving in this current in this current climate, and also in your relevant sectors. And I get asked all the time. People say to me, Jay, what's the standard agency rate? The problem is, now I can say an average rate I see is around £100 an hour. That seems to be a fairly typical rate I would see for a designer, web developer type person. It can increase for creative directors and things like that. But as a general rule, you'll see around £100 an hour, which is it could need to be more, for example, if you've got your offices in the Shard, because your costs will be more. So you have to take into account what is the market conditions and what sector are you in, but you've got to look at that cost forecast and say, if this is what it's going to cost and I want to make 20% and these are the hours I've got, that's what my rate needs to be. Now, if you can't achieve that rate, then two things need to happen. Either your costs need to be reduced or your utilisation of hours needs to increase.
Yeah, and have you had what's your experience? Because a lot of clients are still trying to push us into the single flat rate hole, which I'm dead against. Is there ever a benefit to doing that? I mean, I know from an admin point of view, it's relatively straightforward.
So where the agency has to work on a blended rate, Nina, and you've got one, regardless of whether it's the creative director or whether it's the a junior designer doing it, it's one rate.
That's what lots of clients are pushing for, and I'm really pushing back. Yeah. But I'm just keen to see whether that's something that other people are finding an issue, or whether everybody's, has tailored rates and sort of proportioning the right staff to the right type of work. That's one of my big issues as well.
Yeah. Okay. If you're trying to win business and the client you're going for is asking for that blended rate, I think as long as you can ensure that the hours you're selling will make a profit, it's okay. I think what's really important if you go down that route is to then look at the cost of the individuals delivering that. So, for example, let's say you're getting a job with a new client, and you think it's going to be £100 an hour, 100 hours, and they want a blended rate, say £100. You probably can't have your creative director doing all the 100 hours. So you're going to have a blend of the people that work on it. So I think, again, that comes back to that initial planning stage of that job you're likely to take on, to look at the client's brief and say, well, okay, we've got to give them a blended rate, fine, but let's look internally as a business. What would it actually cost us to deliver those 100 hours with the relevant people? And if we make a calculation then on that blended rate, does it still achieve the profit that we would like?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thanks very much.
But Nina, I think I am seeing more of agencies being asked for a blended rate. In the past, you've always had, a junior designer, a designer, a senior designer, a creative director attracting different rates. But you are correct. More and more agencies are being asked for this sort of blended rate across the board. I think a lot of it probably stems from the procurement issue.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm getting around it at the moment relatively successfully by having sort of 4 tiers. So, you've got a management tier with a management rate. You've got a senior tier, which is your heads of department, a mid tier, and then a lower tier. And that seems to be working okay, but I'm making sure that I'm trying to track the actual costs from an hourly rate in the back.
And if I was doing that, I'd recommend you do resource level costing, but with an absorbed rate. So, for example, you may say, okay, Jay's on a salary of X, but I also take a percentage of the overhead of the business, so that you know that whatever hour I do against that job or any job, it's a cost to the business of X. And that way, I think if you've got this blended rate, you'll start to manage the senior people to the junior people better in that job.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'll have a look at that. The absorbed rate. Great. Thanks very much. That's great, Jay.
Does that make sense? Nina, I'm more than happy to have a more in-depth conversation with you offline on this as well. So just feel free to email me and we can set up a meeting.
Lovely. Thank you. I will do. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Anybody else got any questions? Okay. So just like to thank you all for coming and for being patient with us, because that was the first one we've done, and it's actually, from my point of view, it's fairly difficult to be speaking without getting any feedback. So I'm sure as we do more of these, we will get a little slicker at it. So I do thank you for being patient with us. if people have got questions, feel free to email me, give me a call. I'll make sure my mobile number goes on this slide that we'll send out as well, so you can contact me direct. And as I say, it'd be great if we could start getting a few more discussions around the Agency Food LinkedIn group, and also any questions that people would like to be on the next survey. Please get them up there as well. So I wish you all a good weekend. Hopefully the weather will be nice for us all. And good luck with the challenges in the agencies on Monday. Take care. Bye.